Hi and welcome. I see a lot of self-taught artists, both in my own art community as well as other art communities online, who want to start learning how to paint with oil paints and then come back overwhelmed with the amount of information that is available and perhaps also the tone with which that information is being communicated. I've created this video not to teach you how to work technically with oil paints, but how to navigate through the information that is available to you online and allow you to create a learning workflow that works for you. I will discuss with you why it seems so overwhelming to gather the information that you need about oil paint online, and then I will discuss with you how to structure that information and give you a couple of tips on things that I've learned to avoid and things that I've learned to incorporate in my workflow. And finally, at the end of this video, I will conclude with the information that I think you need when you start learning with oil paint on day one. So why is gathering the right information on learning how to paint with oil paint so difficult online? I see a trend in some of the art communities where we think of oil paint perhaps as the only way to make serious art. There are some people, in fact, who even on YouTube flat out say that oil paint is the only way to make the best kind of art. I am not going to link or otherwise direct you to these people because I really don't think they need a bigger platform than they already have. But perhaps it is that idea that has made learning about oil painting almost seem like a full-time chemistry study. Another reason why the world of oil paint can seem a bit overwhelming is the fact that oil paint is old. It is old and it has a glorious reputation due to the fact that some of the best artworks in our history have been made with oil paint. On the other hand, there are also mediums that are much, much older than oil paint. And when oil paint was introduced in the art world, it was at first met with quite a bit of skepticism. The last reason I want to offer for your consideration is perhaps a little bit tricky. I am not one to make bold statements or accuse whole groups of people of something. And I also don't like to vent my opinion under the disguise of feelings or, this is how I feel, so deal with it. I base this off many, many years spent on art forums, in news groups, because yes, I'm that old. But also chats and social media and even real life gathering. There are some people who feel the need to gatekeep their hobby, their interests, their passion. They find it difficult to accept that the one thing that they spend so much time and effort and money on can also be a fun and lighthearted experiment for some people. Some of these people can be very vocal online, and sometimes with the best intent can overwhelm you with information that doesn't meet your current learning needs. So how do you navigate through the information available online? If you're watching my channel, chances are that you and I are for the most part of the same mindset. And that means that the things that I've learned to avoid might also be something for you to look out for. So I'm going to make a couple of suggestions and you can take from that what you want. Number one to avoid: people who claim that oil paint is superior to everything else. Avoid these people. If your primary goal in art is to outshine everyone else, then you and I are probably not compatible. Number two, people who say that this one thing is the only way. There is only one guy in my life who can say that this is the way, and you are probably not him. There is no one perfect medium. There is no one perfect primer or one perfect substrate, etc., etc. Art, for a lot of people, but especially for me, first and foremost, is an experiment of the creative mind. And I would advise you not to let people close doors for you. Try to avoid wanting to continue on the same level as you left off with your previous medium of choice. Perhaps you are an accomplished graphite artist, or you create portraits with an array of acrylic mediums or techniques. Try to accept that when you change to a different medium, you will take a step back, especially in the complexity of your current workflow. That also brings me to the last thing that I recommend you avoid, which is that complexity of your workflow. And this is my advice to you, is strip it down. Strip down your workflow to the most basic variety that you can handle. For me, that meant taking out color, taking out each and every medium that I was using, and taking out the layering and textural effects that I've gotten used to in my acrylic and mixed media portraits. So this is what I will show you in the last part of this video. What do I need to get started with oil paint on day one? So before I show you what I started with when I started painting with oil paint, here are a couple of tips that you might want to keep in mind. First of all, control your budget. There is nothing more stressful than having to practice with $30 tubes of paint. Starting with student or a lower budget variety of paint allows you to use the paint and use the stuff you have without feeling like you need to complete an artwork, without feeling like you need to succeed at whatever it is you're practicing. My tip number two is forget about longevity. Your student work, your practice work is not going to end up in a museum. You will probably put it on a pile somewhere and not know where it is 10 years from now. So it doesn't need to survive for 60, 80, or 100 years. So forget about museum quality this and longevity that. Work on the stuff that again fits your budget, but also fits a practicing workflow, which means it has to be easy, right? It has to be quick, it has to be easy. The stuff that I got when I started practicing with oil paint was, first of all, oil paint paper. Paper is great. You can store it anywhere you want. You can rip off a sheet, use that. You can fold it up if you want, stack it in a folder. It's great. So get an oil paint paper. I got the basic ass brand from my art supplier, which is basically just their home brand. Works just fine. You don't have to get $10 sheets of Arches oil paper. Just get the regular home brand that is available at your art supplier. If you have a desire to practice for some reason on canvas, don't get stretched canvas. Stretched canvas is something you use when you want to hang something or want to display something. What you can also do is you can get budget canvas on a roll. Some of that stuff is made from cotton, some is made from a cotton polyester brand. Blend. I did say blend. Great. So a blend. Get cheap canvas. You can cut that in different sizes. It's super easy to use. It comes pre-primed, so use it as paper, if you will. Tip number 3 I know it sounds weird, but forget about mediums. Just forget about it. The reason why I recommend against using mediums when you are starting out is because a medium has to add something to your process. And the only way to know what you want to add to your process is to first undergo that process in its most basic form. Go to the art supply store and get 2 tubes of paint. One is titanium white and the other is black, raw umber, burnt umber, blue, purple, pink, whatever your desire is, but get one color and titanium white. Then get maybe 1 or 2 brushes to work with. If you're an acrylic painter or a watercolor painter, you don't want to use your acrylic or watercolor brushes for oil because they will be ruined. No matter how good you clean them, you will ruin them. So get 1 or 2 brushes that are only for your oil painting practicing experiments. If you want to make it easier, and I truly recommend that you make this stuff as easy on yourself as you can, I would very much recommend you get water-soluble oil paint. Not because you want to add water to your paint while painting, because it's not what it's made for, but to make it easier to clean your brushes, right? At the end of your session, you can go and clean your brushes with water and soap and be done with it. There are some voices on the internet saying, oh yeah, water-soluble oil paint is not as good as regular oil paint. Who cares? As I said before, you're getting student-grade materials, you're getting stuff that allows you to work quickly without too much setup, and especially without too much time after you're done with your practice session. I mean, no offense, but you can spend your time cleaning regular oil paint out of your brushes practicing oil painting, right? Now you are ready to get started. Here are a few tips for you when you start out with oil paint, especially when you come from a different medium such as watercolor or acrylic paint. Some stuff that you need to keep in mind that is different with oil paint than it is with other mediums. First tip number 1, don't put too much oil paint on your palette. Oil paint goes a long way. It goes much further than acrylic paint. So you may want to start out with a little bit of oil paint on your palette, and if you use it up, you can just add more. The same goes for the application on your substrate, whether it's canvas or paper. Start out with very thin layers, and that might give you the feeling that your oil paint is not as oily as you want it to be. Like maybe have this idea that oil paint goes on smoothly, etc., but it does not at first. When you apply the first layer of oil paint, you will see that it's very dry, and that's because the oil in the oil paint is being absorbed by your paper or by your canvas or your primer. This is perfectly normal, so no need to sweat it, and especially no need to apply therefore thick layers of oil paint, or please don't do this, add linseed oil to your first layers. As you apply your oil paint thinly and add more and more layers, you will see the surface of your work become smoother, become more oily. And this is exactly why you don't want to start out with thick layers. First of all, because they're not going to dry. Yeah, the drying time for oil paint is much longer. And second of all, because you're going to create a slippery mess of oil that will keep you from adding more layers or adding more details where you need to. Last tip that I want to give you, when you come from acrylic paint, you're used to being able to paint over your mistakes, right? Oh, you made a mistake. Some people put some gesso on it or put some titanium white on it. let it dry for a couple of hours, and get back in there. Like I said, oil paint dries a lot slower. What you can do with oil paint, and this is a great thing, is you can correct by wiping out the oil paint that is on there. This is not going to work with acrylics because that stuff is drying in like 5 minutes and not going anywhere. But oil paint stays open for a long time. So if you do make a mistake, or when you do apply a value or a color that you didn't intend to apply, you can get either a napkin or a piece of cloth or piece of tissue paper and wipe out that part. Sometimes I use a palette knife to scrape it off and then reapply the correct value or color. This also prevents your layers, like I said before, from getting too thick and therefore getting slippery. This was a lot of information also. I hope I didn't overwhelm you. I created a blog with this video as a short overview of the tips that I gave in this video, so I will link it down below and you can read it again if you want. If you want to go ahead and give portrait painting a try in black and white water-soluble oil paint, I have a demo for you available that I recorded 2 years ago and that I've now uploaded to YouTube, so you can watch the entire 5-part demo here on my channel. If you have any questions, the comments are open. If you have any topic you want to discuss about this, my Facebook group, my art community is also open. So let me know what you think. Let me know if I can do anything for you, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.